Good morning, Dale, and thank you very much for talking to me and my listeners today.
You're very welcome. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Firstly, would you please tell our listeners how you came to be an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, I guess it was because I had a great opportunity. So I had always thought I would run my own company, but I had a pretty traditional career path through the corporate sector first. And I really enjoyed that. That was very helpful to me. But I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to run my own thing, although I didn't know what that thing was going to be. But an opportunity came along. Once you kind of open your eyes to the prospect of starting your own company, all sorts of ideas cross your path. So one came up, which was in the mobile technology sector, which was a sector that I had experience of anyway, and that's when I made the leap. So it was very fortuitous and very opportunistic.
So what were some of the early business challenges and perhaps fears you faced in getting Omega Logic established?
There were a lot of challenges. I think the largest to begin with was establishing credibility. We were a small software startup and we were competing with much larger established companies, and we were trying to win contracts with mobile phone networks, with Vodafone, with O2, with Orange, with these massive billion-pound businesses. And so I think our challenge was credibility. And I'm sure that most startups face that challenge as well. And what we did to try to overcome that was work very, very hard and give the networks, give our potential customers everything they wanted. So every time they asked for a meeting, we'd jump. If they asked then for an immediate follow-up, we'd give it. If they wanted response to a tender or additional information requests, we would work really hard to give them everything we wanted, and we would try to be really professional too. I had people working with me who also understood the value of being very, very professional, and I think that really helped. It really, really helped. So that immediately just established credibility because we did what we said we were going to do. So that was the first big thing, and then as the business evolved and we built our technology and we did win some contracts with the network operators and we began to get our services established, the next really big point in the business that was quite difficult to get over was getting enough traction and customer numbers. So we sold top-ups, prepaid top-ups in the UK, and it was actually quite hard. It was going back about 12 or 13 years. It was quite hard to get customers to actually take up our services, and that was very difficult because you're dealing with consumers, individuals who can do what they want. They don't have to take your services. But again, with the help of the networks gave great marketing and great support, and eventually we got there. But it did take a very long time, and we had to really dig quite deep to stick it out and to stick with what we thought we were doing, which was good. And it was just resilience, I think, in the end. We just kept at it, and we kept saying, no, this is going to work, no, it's going to get better, and then eventually it did, and things took off very, very, very quickly in the end.
So the issues you had with the customer side, was that because it was new technology, or was it that they had a lot of choice?
It was worse than new technology. It was displacement technology. So we were displacing a manual system. So prepaid handsets had launched in the late 1990s in Britain, and the only way that you could recharge your airtime or top up your airtime was by buying a scratch card. So there was already a product in the marketplace. Customers knew they could walk into a shop, into a corner store or some such thing, buy a little top-up scratch card, and they could get their airtime. So we were displacing that with an electronic system, with a digital system. So that was hard because even though our system was much more reliable, much better, much cheaper for the retailers, cheaper for the networks, all these great benefits, and much easier for the customer, they just now needed to simply swipe a card, like a credit card, and they'd get instantly topped up. So it was much better for the customer. But that wasn't enough. If you're displacing technology, if you're displacing a product, it's simply not good enough to be, it's not enough just to be better. You almost need other levers to be able to convince customers to change their behaviour. If you have to get customers to change their behaviour, you really have to push them in that direction. And actually what we did in the end, it was quite interesting, I thought, what we ended up doing, or the networks ended up doing, was incentivizing the retailers to sell top-ups rather than sell scratch cards. So retailers got a slightly better commission for selling top-ups than they did for selling the old scratch cards. And that finally changed the market, because the retailers would say to their customers, oh no, don't buy that scratch card, take this top-up, do this top-up instead. And so that was a very, very interesting point to me. It's just simply not enough to be better. You often need something else added to drive customer change.
Fascinating. So what was your vision at the time you established the company?
Well, we wanted to be the best tech provider for top-ups on the high street. So we recognised that a lot of high street retailers already had till systems, they already had till infrastructure, and we wanted to be the best software provider, leveraging off all those existing infrastructures. And we did that by, as I say, being professional, having great technology, but we weren't without competition. I have to say, we had some fantastic competitors as well. It was a very, very competitive battle, and we didn't win every one. But I think what we did do is we carved out a reputation for delivering good service to the customers that we had, and of course that helped massively in the retail and mobile segments to then win you more business and more business.
So just picking up on that point around competition, were there any other key elements that you introduced to compete or differentiate yourself with your competition?
It was very difficult to differentiate because the service, we're effectively reselling airtime from the network operators, and the network operators understandably and necessarily wanted an awful lot of control over how we did that. So our core offerings had to be quite similar to our competitors. So the only way that we could differentiate, as I say, was to have technology that never fails, that was very robust, that was very resilient, and as I say, from a business perspective, then ourselves as a team, our project leaders, our project management, and the way in which we ran these IT projects in the most professional manner possible. And even though that's something very difficult to measure and it's very grey, it's not black and white at all, it is so vital, because what I did learn on the journey is that these large companies will work with small companies that they enjoy working with. So even though it may seem that it might be more risky to work with a small company or a startup, if they like you, if they like your team, and they like the people, they will do the deal with you. They will do business with you.
That's good to know. Did branding play a role in the development of the company?
I think that the brand is very much interlinked with credibility and reputation in the B2B space. We're purely B2B. So I guess our brand, the company brand, I hope became synonymous with some of these attributes that I've mentioned.
Yes.
So yes, it's vital.
Now you, like me, have a chartered accounting background, so I imagine strong financial management in the business was a very strong feature. Would you like to comment on that?
It was absolutely crucial. So as well as running the technology systems for these top-ups, we also managed the cash flow. So we would bill the retailers, they would give the money to us, we'd take our share of the commission, and then we'd pass that money back to the network. So in our fifth year of trading, we billed £450 million worth of top-ups, and they washed through various bank accounts that we had set up to manage this money back into the network operators. So that's an enormous amount of money, and we had good, solid, strong systems to deal with that. But being an accountant in my early years, it really did teach me that to make sure that the systems and the controls were very much belts and braces. So I had reconciliations going back and forward and up and down all over the place to make sure to the penny that I knew exactly where all the cash was in the system and what had been billed and what hadn't been paid and what have you. And that was really good. Again, what I learned is that my systems for managing and reconciling all of those billings were sometimes better than the large companies, and that did give us an advantage. It meant that in our later years, if one of my retailers or if one of my network operators had a query about something, I was pretty sure my systems were right, and that was and they were. And often networks would come, or retailers would come to us and look at our systems to validate what was in their systems. That was really helpful.
Oh, that's amazing. That's fantastic. You've mentioned already some of the key lessons you learned in being an entrepreneur and running that business. What else did you learn that you took with you to the ventures you're involved with today?
Well, I know it's talked about a lot, but personal resilience, I think, is paramount. So there were a number of times on the journey when we hit bumps in the road, and it was difficult, and you hit it the first time and you clamber over the obstacle, and then you soldier on, and then you come across another big hurdle. So as all business people will know, that is the nature of business. It's never plain sailing. But the degree to which you can kind of dig deep and find the strength to overcome whatever's being thrown at you, that is so vital. You know, to really be tough and strong and firmly believe in what you're doing. It's that combination of resilience and passion. So if you strongly believe in what you're doing and you feel very passionate about it, then it's quite easy to defend your position, and easy when you do come across those problems to overcome them. But that is really what is very, very key. And so now when I'm working with startup entrepreneurs, I do try to look for those attributes, and it's hard to know how to find those attributes. It's not a question that you can ask and have answered that tells you that somebody is going to be resilient. You often don't really find out until you're a year or two into the business development and something really horrendous happens. That's when you see the real mark of the entrepreneur. But I can't underplay that enough. That's absolutely vital. There are times when it would have been quite easy just to close the doors and say, sorry to our shareholders, we've done our best, and walked away. But I really believed in what we were doing, what we were doing, and really fought hard to keep things going. So I think that's the most vital. And then, of course, it would be remiss of me not then to mention the underlying business economics. So these days I do see that there's so much going on in the enterprise scene, the entrepreneurial environment, so many startups, so many ideas, so much kicking around. But you have to have a good underlying business. You have to have, ideally, growth market, strong margins, as well as the good people. So all of these things do, mix into the soup of making a great business, and you kind of need them all.
I agree, totally agree. What about coaching and mentoring? Did you have, and do you still have, coaches and mentors who did and perhaps currently support you with what you're doing?
I guess I have a lot of people who have helped me along the way. I've never had a formal mentor that I would meet with regularly in a structured way, but I have people who I rely on. So, for example, the moment my best friend, who is very senior in the finance sector, and we meet every Saturday morning, have a cup of coffee, and it's brilliant because we're both doing all right in our respective sectors, but they're very, very different. She's very, very large, big corporate, and I work very much in the small business scene. And that's really helpful to have somebody who really cares for me, wants to help me and act as a sounding board. I think it's really important that you have someone who's safe, someone who you know that you can just say anything to, and they're going to respond in a helpful way, in an additive way. So I have a few people like that around. And this friend in particular. And during the actual journey of building Amiga Logic, I had two strong co-founders, and that really helped as well. Having a team build the business means that you can just constantly bounce things off them all the time, and they're both very, very strong. So you do need something, don't you? Otherwise it's very lonely. It's really isolating.
Yes. So your co-founders, did you all have complementary skills to each other?
This was the absolute beauty of it. Now, my co-founders were my husband and my brother-in-law.
Oh.
Yeah, and this is the amazing thing. I often think back and can't believe how lucky we were. So I had a business background. I have an MBA as a chartered accountant, very business, very general management, finance, all those kind of fields. My husband had a sales background in the mobile world. I'd also worked in mobile. He did too. And my brother-in-law was a software engineer, and he used to write, used to cut code, he used to write software programs for credit card companies.
Oh.
So his technology skills were perfectly in the sector that we wanted to be in. My husband worked in mobile for sales, and I worked in mobile for finance and more general business fields. So it was amazing. And that was really important because I couldn't do anything that either of them could do, and they couldn't do what I could do. So there was really nice complementarity, and I think that's rare, and that was completely fortuitous. That was just very, very lucky that came together. And of course, because of the family connection, there was immense trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So you then sold Omega Logic. How did you feel? I mean, was that part of the plan in setting it up, that it was your exit strategy to sell?
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Definitely. We set it up with the intention of building something big and great and addressing particular problems in the market. And of course, it was opportunistic as well. We saw that there was a need for this change in the marketplace. But we also recognised that, or we had presumed that being a startup, we'd only be able to take it to a certain point, we'd only be able to grow it to a certain level before we would need to bring in significant investment or really build up the team or ramp up the management and then take it internationally. And at that point, we didn't have the appetite for that. My co-founders didn't have the appetite for that. So we did sell, and then actually I became the CEO of the company that bought us for a couple of years, but then I started having children. And that's when, so we had a nice exit, that was lovely, and still involved in the business, but then I started having kids, and we had 3 children within 4 years, and that did change things, because I decided that I wanted to be able to keep my hand in business, but not be working the ridiculous 60, 70, 80-hour weeks that you do when you're running a company.
Yes.
So I purposely stepped back and instead turned my hand to investing in startups, which was great because when you invest, you can do 1 investment a year or 3 investments a year, whatever you want, and you can get as involved in your companies or uninvolved as you want as well. So it was a good combination for me at the time.
Brilliant. Yeah. So for budding entrepreneurs, perhaps listening to this interview now, what would be, say, 3 key points you would give them as they get on the road to entrepreneurialism?
I think it's very important to clearly understand and articulate what it is that you're doing. What problem are you solving, and how are you going to make money? The real basics of the business. Why is your business? If you can articulate very clearly what your business is and what problem you're solving, I think that's very important. And really understand where the money is coming from. I think the whole team dynamics is important as well. And often what happens, like in my company, you hook up with people that you know and that you think are going to be useful to your company. We were very lucky that the people that we started with were the people that we exited with, so we didn't really have any problems along the way. But I have been involved in companies where that hasn't been the case, and actually it's more common where you do need to make changes in your team as you go on your journey. And I would say with that's very usual. It's very normal. If you've got any concerns with your team or with your strategy, it's much, much better to face them head on, assertively, clearly, politely, as soon as possible, rather than just leaving them. I think as humans, we tend to leave some of those things a little bit too long, and it's better if there are problems just to sort them out, and then you can draw a line under things and move on. But it is quite common, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. It does happen. What else could I suggest? I think these days that networking is very important, and I think our entrepreneurial ecosystem, particularly in London where I'm based, is very important. There's lots going on. There's lots of people that you can meet, lots of events and speeches and talks and things that you can attend, which is great. But you have to moderate it a bit. So you are building a company, and sometimes I do see the same entrepreneurs at various events, and I kind of think, go go back to the office and keep building your business.
Do some work.
Or I see them on Twitter. I can see them, they're tweeting a lot and they're at events a lot. And I do think it's important to do that, but you have to moderate it. And we're in a different world now than we were, then, I guess, 13 years ago when I started my company. There was no Twitter then. There was nowhere near as much networking. The dot-com bubble had just burst. So there wasn't the opportunities that there are now. So I would just say, just moderate it and make sure, remember that you're building a business. And it is important to go out and learn new stuff, but build your business. Yeah. That's what you should be doing.
Totally agree with you. So your own goals for the next, say, 3 to 5 years, what have you on the horizon personally or professionally?
I have this funny thing where every year I sit at the start of the year and I write out my goals and what I want to do. And I pick them up every month and I have a look and see how I'm going. And the last couple of years have been crazy because what I've set myself out to do at the start of the year, I've got 6 months or so into the year and found myself taken off into a completely different direction. And this is what often can happen after you've exited a company and you have some freedom and some choice in what you do. If you get out there enough and if you do meet some cool people and maybe you do a bit of mentoring or what have you, you get some amazing opportunities thrown at you. So I'm working on so many things at the moment, be it with government, with some fantastic startups, with foundations and institutions to help promote entrepreneurship, and kind of none of that was on my radar 2 years ago. So I'm not sure what the next 2 years is going to have in store for me, but I know it's going to look completely different to what I'm doing today. I do just want to keep being a strong advocate for entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs as well. I think that we have a different outlook and there are different dynamics sometimes in being a female entrepreneur, and I like to keep promoting entrepreneurship generally and doing anything that I can to help women in business more specifically.
Fantastic. And one final question. So when you're like me, sitting in your rocking chair, aged 101 years old, what will give you the greatest reason to smile about the life that's gone before you?
Well, it's got to be my 3 kids, doesn't it?
And your husband, hopefully.
Great. And I do get an enormous amount of pleasure out of business, just full stop. I'm very, very comfortable in a boardroom or in a coffee house in Shoreditch talking to an entrepreneur. I'm very comfortable. But at the end of the day, I have these 3 boys who keep me extremely grounded, I have to say. If my head's getting too big for my shoulders, they'll certainly knock me back down to earth. And they do give me an enormous amount of pleasure, so it has to be family.
Absolutely. Dale, thank you so much. Your story has been fabulous, and I know that people listening to this will be absolutely inspired. Not everybody wants to achieve at the level you have, but those that do will take very valuable lessons from what you've been talking about, I'm sure.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Dale.